Namaste everyone. Welcome to the yet another episode of Pilot Talks.
Pilot ki baat.
Pilot ki baat. Our last episode was very interesting. We did speak to Capt.Joseph Alapat. He talked about his experiences in handling the cruise ships, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Mary II, Victoria, and also the aircraft carriers. So, and due to the time constraint, we were not able to cover many questions. And so we have requested him to come back, and he was very kind enough to give some of his precious time to us. Captain sir, how was the experience on the last episode?
Absolutely great. I mean, Joseph Alapat is known as a very, prominent personality in the circles of port management, port operations, and also in the Deputy Conservator circle. So he's a very senior most DC also today. And hearing from him, getting on this show was really a good thing that we thought about. And it will only benefit the people who are listening to him because, situation like that may not come now in ports. Because the ports are gearing up for the, better planning and better things. But these guys have done it when there was not much of infrastructure available in the port. So it was great to hear him. And I really want to hear a lot more about pilot training and things like that from him now. So let's welcome Captain Joseph Alapat again. And this is yet another show of Pilot Ki Baat, which is going to go, viral onto the national as well as international media, just to share knowledge with all the pilots about Indian pilotage. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And for our viewers, Captain Joseph Alapat has over 15 years of sailing experience and 25 years of pilotage experience. He has been involved in the concept of commissioning a container terminal, an LNG terminal, and an FTM in the port of Cochin. He has piloted all the luxury cruise ships of Cunard Lines, which includes Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Mary II, Queen Victoria, and Queen Elizabeth. He has also piloted all the aircraft carriers of the Indian Navy, including the latest one under commissioning. So let's not wait. Let's get Captain Joseph Alapat on board. A very warm good morning to Captain Joseph Alapat. Welcome back to the show. We are really proud and happy to have you on board yet again.
Thank you very much, Captain Alapat. Thank you so much for joining again. And very interesting discussions last time we had. And I'm sure the people who watched, the viewers, they must have liked the show. And since this also goes to the international, media, few of the interviews what we did last time, in episode 12 and 13 and 14, we're also, we got a call and very good comments on LinkedIn as to, because they also don't know many things about, Indian pilotage system. And as not glorification, but as we bring this personalities like you into highlight, they also realize that, of course, we have the trade, we have the ports, we have 200 plus minor ports and, 30 major ports and all that. But how well system is well thought, They all think that the system is still handed over the way it was given by British and nothing has happened after that. So it is not the case. So that is also another awareness creating program for this. I want to ask you a question, Vijay, if I may start this time again.
Please go ahead.
Captain Joseph, you mentioned a very important thing last time, and it was really, because AIMPA is involved in, making a training program. How it happened is, IMU had the agenda of making a, pilot training program, and they had made a few years back and given to the Ministry of Shipping. And that's time the AIMPA came into the picture, and Madam, VC Ma'am Manish was there, and since I was in touch with her, and she asked me, and she saw the activism, kind of activism done by AIMPA on pilot ladder safety and things like that. She definitely asked about pilot training thought, and that's time, I was trying to get some private partner on board, which is still under discussion with the Maersk and with Synergy, this company, with respect to the pilot training of a man-scale model training. And I was trying to make a proposal for ministry for that, to have that kind of center in India. And that's time we strike chords and, we were told to make a module-based syllabus of pilot training. So then again, got by a fire back from recruitment to retirement kind of reforms of pilots. So, and you are also one of them, one of the DCs who really, very carefully went through an entire syllabus and told us your contingency planning suggestions were taken into account and things like that. I mean, there is enormous thing one can do for a pilot training. So I was told that since there's no pilot training other than the conventional, happening on board, happening in port of 200 and 300 movements, no classroom training is happening. The pilots also are not aware of the, port management systems and, natural disaster management and things like that, So you mentioned about peer-to-peer learning. I want to really, get your thoughts on this show for pilot training. What are your consolidated thoughts on pilot training? How it should be? What gaps are there at the moment? How AIMPA could, take this forward to close these gaps in professionally, in getting the pilot geared up for the next, gen kind of stuff.
Thanks for the question, Kevin. This is something very close to my heart, and the question is so huge that we might need about 4 or 5 programs to finish it. But I would try to just touch upon the few points. Yes, pilot training is very important, and we can't stress it enough. That said, you ask any pilot, and he will tell you that he learns more when talking to other pilots of that port or the other ports. They learn more talking to each other because we're such a small community, and the kind of knowledge that is shared, over in the evening probably between pilots is far more information than they get on their own. So that's very important that the pilots themselves interact. Like we have a system here where we kind of have a pilots meeting once a month, where everybody shares their views and across, what one person sees is shared across the whole team. So that's very important. I have given a lot of importance to pilot training because I think that's very core of safety in a port, safe navigation in a port. It's a pilot and pilot alone. Once you've allotted a pilot a ship, how he does it and what he does, you don't have any control over. He's his own master there. So if you have very reliable pilots, you're lucky. And the way to get that is to emphasize the training. So as harbor master, I used to review their training monthly of the pilots, which all ships they've done. I would ask them questions about those ships. Did they notice something, which they should have noticed? Understanding the currents and all are a vast subject. Like you said, I also did observe in the port of Antwerp when I went there for a study. One simulator we were using, and the other simulator was being used by the port of Antwerp to train their pilots, to review their pilots actually. They have a pilot panel of retired and senior pilots who evaluate the juniors. So the juniors were doing the movements, grading them to move into the next level. So we have a lot of examples of pilot training from the port of Antwerp or Rotterdam and these established ports, which we could either, take from. And that also, like you said, goes from joining till you reach your highest grade and beyond. There are refresher trainings also. Simulators are the new thing. Man models are very complex to create and maintain. So man models are few and far between, but definitely a hands-on training there. Simulators are now the new regime now. And a simulator is only as good as how accurately it depicts the port. If you don't have the port's currents mapped smoothly in the simulator, it can be counterproductive because the pilot will think, oh, I'm a great pilot, I can do this and all that. When he comes to the actual waters, he finds it very different. So that's also a dangerous thing. So what we need is simulators, port specific. But like you said, there must be a foundation course, pilots and junior pilots or masters aspiring to be pilots. So we have a kind of foundation course which gives the basics. That could be man model simulators or whatever, generic training. There's a lot of and regulations and things like that which are generic to all ports. After that, we need to move into port-specific training. And in port-specific training is not just while he joins, but evaluation continuously after that. And nothing beats experience. You can't buy it off a shelf. A pilot with 10 years experience is a million times better than a pilot with 1 year experience. And that 1 to 9, 1 to 10, you can't kind of buy that experience anywhere or give it in a classroom. So that's where the peer-to-peer training does come in, where the senior pilot would talk and say what he hears, and the junior would pick on those points and incorporate them into his own pilotage. So there's a lot of things to be done. But like I said, I think it'd be in 2 phases. First would be generic training, which could be done at IMU or any other training institute. which also syllabus types, very, very specific as to what they have to teach. And then it would move into the port, because after that, once a pilot becomes a pilot of a port, thereafter it becomes the port's interest and the port's responsibility really to make sure that he's well trained and capable of handling ships which he's given to do. And I'm an old school that way in not cutting corners here. Sometimes we had like shortage of pilots. There was a fast track, let's move pilots up into deeper ships and bigger ships faster. That I think is counterproductive. It's dangerous. I believe in even how much pain it takes. We have to go the long, hard road and get them trained. Let them do the number of shifts required to do. Don't cut short the training. It's a bit like when we had shortage of seafarers, we cut down the cadetship time, things like that. It's counterproductive in the long run. So we need to have a training system which is rigid and well followed by all the ports, so that we produce quality pilots. The idea is not to be the best pilot in the world. That is subjective and egoistic too. No pilot should be aspiring to do that. He should be a very good pilot. You could give a job to him with your eyes closed. I know my pilots like I know my children. I know some of them, what their capacities are. Some are very hardworking. You could put them on ships in and out, day in and day out, and they would work, no problem. Some would need a little rest after 2 shifts. You just have to understand their own limitations. No two people are the same, and nurse them along. For me, I mean, it's been a journey of great satisfaction when I see the people I have trained from greenhorns to now handling aircraft carriers. It's a huge satisfaction to me.
No, absolutely, sir. Great. I mean, I've been in touch with a lot of Kochi pilots, and many of the pilots are members of AIMPA also. Captain Sergeant Varghese is also of the, executive council of AIMPA, and Rajesh Nambiar, of course, Tish Menon, all young guys also there. And what you said is right. Really, they have the same sentiments to you, that you treat them as your children, and they treat you as their father, because you've been taking care of them very well. And Kochi pilots are known for their training, their mannerism that they come on board and things like that. They are known for that, and I'm sure you must have developed it. That it's the cultural change and shift, because it is not there in other ports. I'm not saying that it is all the pilots are not so good, but Kochi pilots are very good, and other port pilots also are. Some of the pilots are already setting examples in dealing with the ships. Yes. I mean, pilot training, man scale model training and things like that. I mean, of course, we have put in there. Only one part, which is missing in training in India, which we also had missed, but after your email came, we included, was contingency training, and that we included the rescue training also. Because this is something, which is happening in Europe for last 2.5 years. Because what if the pilot falls in the water, which is an eventuality, which is possible, with the dynamic forces that he boards the vessel on. So it is quite possible. So what does the board do for that? Is the pilot board equipped for that kind of handling emergency pilot crew training, pilot board crew training and all that? So that is what is coming up next now in this thing. And we are included that as a module 9 as to rescue training for the pilot as well as for the pilot board crew. So that will also form the part of the syllabus. We recently concluded Samiptam, which was a pilot ladder competition among the MTIs, and it was very well responded. Our next competition is going to be in line from December onwards, Samipta 2.0, because in AIMPA's opinion, the entire pilot transfer procedure needs to be taken care of. Not only pilot ladder. Pilot ladder is the very lowest hanging fruit. But pilot transfer procedure, where the entire pilot transfer process is owned by the port itself. Recently an accident happened in Newcastle port in Australia, where one of the pilots fell down and had a very fatal accident and quite almost incapacitated. And we interviewed him on this, and the amount of new initiatives they have launched. Janine Drummond is a harbour master, all harbour master then, and Janine and the entire team, they launched a lot of innovative ideas of kind of having signal lights and traffic signal lights and all that. I mean, whether pilot should board or not. So it's a decision to be made by the pilot board, pilot station, and the master of the vessel. So all of them have to display that green light to say, yes, pilot can board now and I'm okay. So that kind of a consent, So it was a good thing. I would let Vijay ask the question next, because particularly he's going to ask you on the BRN. He being a master mariner and recently has come down from sailing. the BRM is always question. So Vijay, you can shoot your question as you would ask a pilot on board. So Captain Joseph can answer you that kind of question. He's with the hands-on pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. BRM, we all know that it's one of the mandatory courses. We seafarers do it, whether be a junior officer, whether be it a senior officer. It's done 3 to 5 years, depending on the company's requirement. And it's one of the most important course if you want to be a very good ship handler, a very good navigating officer. And when we have pilotage, whenever there is a pilot on board, as we all know that BRM, it means the pilot is also a part of the bridge team management as well as the bridge resource management. But there are many accidents which happen when there is pilot on board and the duty officer or the master hesitates to challenge the pilot diplomatically, positively. So where do you think what happens on the bridge which you can overcome these mistakes that are happening when there is a pilot on board and the pilot is in charge? I mean, the master is, we always mention that the orders as per master's orders on pilot's advice. So it's always the pilot's advice. But I've seen many of the duty officers, they still are finding it very difficult to challenge the pilots if they feel that something is going wrong. So where do you think, sir, where we can improve on this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Manoj. Basically, it's very important. Like I said, ship handling skills is one part. Getting yourself on to and off the ship without getting killed is another part. And a very important part, which I always tell my juniors, is communication. It's very important. I mean, in everything, in any part of life, communication is very important. So this is very important in the case of the bridge stream management also. Because the pilot, in fact, I remember seeing a video by a PNI club, and I'm not naming them, but I thought it was a little insulting where they called it the stranger on the bridge. It's like some person has come here to kind of collide my ship or sink it or whatever. A pilot comes on board to do what? To put your ship safely alongside. That is the aim of the master. That is the aim of the ship. I mean, that's the aim of the pilot. That's the aim of the port. That's the aim of the shipping company and the cargo interest. Everybody wants the ship to come in safely. So where is the conflict? I find that very strange. I used to find a lot of some masters a little, not very friendly when you go on board. They question everything, and the tone and tenor sets you off a bit. As it is, you're stressed. We don't need another stress factor to come into this. So I think communication is very important both ways. I mean, some pilots are a little arrogant. They don't tell you what they're doing, and discourage questioning. That's also not good. Similarly, on the master's time, it should be welcoming at least. I mean, when you see a person for the first time, he's come to help you. He's providing a service to you. If you look at it from a port's perspective, the only person the captain really sees from the port itself as a representative is the pilot. So, that interaction should be there, that he is, after all, a senior mariner, and he should trust the port that he will not send somebody who's not capable of taking ship in. That trust has to be there. It's the same trust that the pilot puts on the ship to rig the ladder properly. I mean, we have to have that trust between human beings. If not, that we can't really start talking anyway. So that's one. Second is as you go older and do more pilotage, you develop your own systems. Like, I would joke to the captain that my plan A is to turn to port side, and plan B is, if that doesn't happen, plan B is to turn to starboard. And I don't have a plan C. And then that would generally generate a small smile and set everything down in order. Because sometimes you do go with a plan, and some masters want to know everything from the time you board to the time the last line is made fast, or even before you can catch your breath or your first sip of coffee. So that's also a little putting off. So then I tell them, let's take it as we're going along, because I'll talk, as it happens rather than now. Because I might say we're turning to port, and then the ship decides she wants to turn to starboard, and that's it, So these things happen. But in the end of the day, the aim is the same. So that's number one. So communication is the most important part of this. And I think trust, very important. And also, how you gel. If you've been if you've sailed before, obviously, you understand their perspective. They don't understand your perspective. Very few ship masters have pilotage experience. That's unfortunate. In fact, one shipping company did contact us, and some ports do provide training for ship masters. I think that's a good thing. We should both learn each other's jobs. The pilots generally know the ship master's job because they're coming from there, whereas the master doesn't generally understand the pilot's job. So if you have some of the masters coming on board with us for training, we had some legal issues and it's very difficult to get things done in the government. So it did not work out. But I think we should look at it in all ports where we get some ship masters to join us and go with the pilots and get a feel of it. And it would be a revenue earning for the port and a lesson for the masters of what pilots expect from the ships. I think it will benefit everybody all along. So, but yes, communication, I think, and trust, number 2.
Thank you, sir. After doing a 3-day BRM course and a 1-day refresher course, you have summed it up in just 2 simple words: trust and communication. Now, trust is a very fragile thing, but it is the foundation on which all the relationships are built. And pilot, like you said, that pilot trust that the ladder is properly rigged, and we as seafarers, we should do that. And once the pilot comes on board, he sees that the ladder is properly rigged. We have a duty officer, all the necessary safety protocols are followed. He will come on the bridge. He will be in a very happy mood, speak to the master, speak to the duty officer. I mean, the normal protocol, what they have. And then, like you said, communication, a bridge team meeting, the bridge and the master pilot exchange that we have. So that's where the communication stands. And also the duty officers should definitely be a part of that communication, what the pilot wants to share to the bridge team and what are his plans, because he being an expert in that port. And thank you so much. And that was very enlightening for us. Thank you so much. And last question, I would let Captain Gajanan take the floor and shoot.
No, thank you very much for that BRM thing, because BRM is a buzzword these days, and a lot of pilots are not reluctant to undergo training. I mean, when we proposed about the revalidation, what you mentioned, the refresher training for the pilots, we said why not we do a BRM course, because nowadays the bridge resources have become many and plenty and complex. Even the pilots, personal portable units or piloting units which are coming up. There's a big data gap between the ship's data and pilot data and all that. Apart from that, human-to-human interaction also is a questionable thing. I mean, lot of accidents have happened because of this. But anyway, I mean, as you rightly said, the communication and more training, more soft skill training to pilots of dealing with a team, and how eager the pilot captain is to hand over the vessel to him at the close of breakwater, or at the close of a entry channel. So it all sums up very well. Thank you very much for that. But we are looking at starting a BRM course also for the existing pilots, which is the BRM 3.0, because I did that course myself from Australia. Capt.Vijay takes it. It was an online course, and I learned a lot of things, a lot of new technology. And that third generation course is like about big data and things like that. How the accidents can really happen, not only by the speed or not only by the attitude of pilot, but not being able to interpret the data the way it is to be done. Because today data is king, even on the bridge. So anyway, the last question has to end with the story, because you have plenty of them. Tell us one interesting story about your job as DC, and we should also carry a good message to the pilots in India as well as abroad as to what exactly Deputy Conservator does, and it could be a great end of this this episode. Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up, Captain. It's the DC is like the captain of the ship, the captain of the port. He's one lonely soul. He's all alone by himself. He's got the management on one side, customers on the other, and he's in between. And then you have the pilots on the third side. Sometimes, if you're not on good friendly terms with them, and it's a very difficult. And then you have the regulatory bodies which are also down your back all the time. So it's a juggle all along. First of all, many people don't understand the term deputy conservator. If I go on board a ship and I say I'm a deputy conservator, they say, "Oh, I want to meet the harbor master." So I'm a bit embarrassed there. But the old term for the deputy conservator was port officers. We were port officers till up to the 1950s. I think it was when it changed over to deputy conservators. Port officers used to be the conservators of the port. Basically, it was a one-man show. The port officer was a law in the port. As it became a trust and the management came on top, so then they were redesignated as deputy conservators, but the job remains the same. Day to day, you're worried about the port. The port is it's like your own farm or a garden that you have to watch over to make sure that nothing bad happens and everything goes smoothly. So it's mainly an administrative job, and it's a thankless job, and it's a 24/7 job. Anything goes wrong, the first phone call is to you. You're responsible for the emergency response. You're responsible for regulatory aspects of the port. Tanker handlings. Now we've also got the ISPS. You're the port facility security officer, so that security is not something that we were very trained in. But now I am pretty good. I think I could make a decent police officer too. But these are challenges of the job, and it's a lonely job really. I would draw parallel for seafarers. Very easy one to do is the DC is the master of the ship, the harbor master, the chief officer, who does all the job really. I mean, and he's got his officers, which are the pilots and dock masters and all that. And it's like a deck side of a ship, and then he's got the engine side, which looks after the machinery parts like the tugs and the dredgers and things like that. So the DC, everything is your responsibility. You have a lot of divisions under you: fire safety, dredging, shipping, of course, and survey, hydraulic surveys, and also navigational aids. That's another big challenge because it's very hard to get my navigational aids attended to properly, because not many people appreciate the difficulties in this. And I think it's a long time since I think things should come back to where marine people and operational people should have a bigger say in port operations, in port management actually, because we've seen that without that things slip. We've had accidents. One case that comes to mind is of Bombay, where there was a collision. And another one, if I think of Ennore recently, a few years ago, which resulted in a big oil spill. And most of these reports had mentions of need for more mariners or people with marine backgrounds to take up management positions in the port. And that sadly has happened, not happening, because we all join ships, we all join the ports after we sail at ships. So we join a much later stage. So like chances of reaching higher levels are limited because we join at a later stage. Whereas the other people who've been in the ports for far longer, having joined at a younger age, they rise up to management positions, which mariners can't. So we need some sort of a address to that issue. So conservancy is a full-time job. It's a one-man show in a way, but in the end of the day, you feel that you've done something, I think. I would much rather be a harbor master, which I was for 12 years of my life in Cochin Port. But well, you have to bite the bullet when it comes to you. You have to, hold on to it. And I'm sitting here for 3 years now, and I still get up in the morning thinking, my God, what all can go wrong today? But thankfully, God has been kind, and hopefully will be kind for another 2 years at least.
Absolutely. I mean, that's true, and very, very well elaborated, illustrated disease rule. I mean, as you rightly said, when even we used to come to the Indian ports, and harbor master used to be a master of the harbor. So it was thought about that, and conservator probably a post which would look after the conservation of the port and environmental damage and things like that. But today, with the experience that the DC comes in with the pressure of handling the entire port operations, and that is why we included that a small module of practical training of one week in that 4 weeks course of pilot training was the incoming pilot or entry level pilot becoming a understudy, which is the concept drawn from the industry. Understudy for 1 day for DC, understudy of a harbor master, assistant harbor master, understudy of a chairman of the port. Where would they would be in their offices and just watch how DC does. Because all of us have learned our jobs also on ship that way, as to how the captain deals with the stewardess and PSCs and other officials and all that, and we basically learn from that a great deal of qualities. So these today's pilots, as they enter only the port as a master, as a captain, this thing, so they're not very keen to learn things, So unless you call them understudy, that you're a trainee, they will not probably get into that mode of training. So I always think. So very rightly said. I mean, this is what they need to know about the DC's job.
Absolutely, Gajanan, we are sailors. We know how to run ships. We know how to manage ships. That's the only skill that we have, because we generally join at the age of 18. Of course, there are a lot of other things involved. Just being a master doesn't involve just navigation or cargo operations. It involves a lot of things. But I'm saying is that, as what nothing prepares you for what you, up to harbor master job, you're hands-on. You're dealing with ships, and generally ships and shipping agents, which you've been dealing with all your life. But when you come to the DC's post, then you become an administrator in the true sense of the word, and sense of the word, and you're kind of a government servant also. In a way, I mean, you finally have to learn the ways and the rules of the government, how they function, how the files are put up, how sanctions are taken, how budgets are made, things like that, which you don't really aren't really prepared for. Because on a ship, if you want something done, you just one phone call and it's done. Or you don't even have to make a phone call. If you just look at it and look at the chief officer, he'll fix it the next day. So, it's a big change for us where, you're suddenly out of control. You can shout as much as you want, things don't get done. So you must know how to get around that, how to get things done within the system. So you have to change, and that big change happens very late in your life. So it's a little difficult, but there's no option. But, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So once you become a DC, you have to do what is required to get the job done.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, I can't thank you enough for one thing of being on this show. Number one. Number two is sharing your enormous and wealth of knowledge. These are not the words, just words, because, you also mentioned one thing, which is going to, I always, make notes down. So I've noted down one thing, that the masters to be included in the BRM courses. So, and in the pilot training. So if there are any aspirants pilots, like Vijay, who are not yet become pilot, but want to become pilot in future, there's no harm in including them also in, into the port training, taking them on the bridge with the pilot, as a training. So even the pilot also learns from the master who's accompanying him in the boat, by talking to him and things like that. And anyway, thank you very much, sir. Vijay, anything you want to say, and we can conclude this episode?
Nothing, sir. It was very overwhelming to listen to Captain Joseph with his 15 years of sailing and so many years of pilotage experience being a harbor master. And the best part was he talked about deputy conservator. So many of the viewers would know what a deputy conservator is now. And thank you so much. And we all know that you have very huge responsibilities being overall in charge of the department, also responsible as a port facility security officer, and overall efficient management of the marine operations, if I'm not mistaken. And thank you so much, sir. It was really an honor to be listening to you. And I'm sure it will be very helpful for all the marine pilots, aspiring marine pilots, and all the existing seafarers who would learn a lot from watching this show. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Right, sir.
Thank
you
for
so
having
much.
me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.